Like, where is the future of towing in social media? Is it still like, I feel like there's so many, we'll call them old dogs, that Facebook was the go-to be all. Like, I feel like that's like, am I missing something by not being on? Like, is towing popping off on Twitter or X?
I don't have a Twitter, so I don't know.
Neither do I. Well, actually, I do, but again, I'm not on it. I don't know.
I
So
mean, towing was fairly big on Instagram with the towing in the six account when all the shootings and fires were going on. But I
okay,
haven't really used Instagram the last couple of years. I've only ever been on Facebook.
I know that's because I
I guess
feel
we
like
are
as
old
much as
dogs now.
we're not old though. I'm not
Well, if
old.
we're only using the grandpa Facebook and we're not really, you're not on TikTok very often. I scroll TikTok, but my whole TikTok's farm related, not towing related. Well, if you think about it,
Towing
if you
media.
go on Facebook onto Tow Talk, there's 98.1 thousand members just in one Facebook group called Tow Talk.
Yeah, but how many actually are active, right? Like that is a big problem you run
Yeah.
into. I never trust those numbers. How many are actually active? How many actually view? When you run a page, you can see more your reach, your actual views, which are two different things, right? And that kind of stuff. So that's where you really get the true numbers. Where just having a Facebook following, or a number of people following, you can't really get all that information.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, Towman G, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, friend, and former co-worker, the man with very strong opinions, Mr. Plain Guy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
I'm proud of myself. I haven't done that intro in at least 3 weeks, probably closer to 4 weeks now, and I didn't mess up.
It's actually shocking how
It is.
the time
Very.
off clearly has done you well.
Well, I don't know
And
about
you've been
that, but
like, have you been practicing it every morning since our last episode to make sure that when the time came you would nail it, or was it is that just naturally engraved now?
instead of counting sheep to try to fall asleep, I just do the intro over and over again in my head.
Hey man, whatever works for you. As G said, welcome back to another episode of the Towing Life Podcast, episode 136. After a little bit of a hiatus, it was supposed to be 2 weeks. It turned into 3 weeks just because of scheduling conflicts. We could not seem to make a recording work before I left. Again, as usual, I will take all the blame. The hiatus was caused or due to my wife and I finally needing a breakaway. As most of you know, the towing industry is a nonstop 24/7 business. And sometimes, with my wife working in this industry as well, sometimes it's nice to just get away. And we did.
Yep.
We had an amazing 10 days down in the Dominican Republic. I made a bet with one of my dispatchers that I would not log into our towing software at all while I was down there. So I would not see what active calls were going on, scheduled calls, what drivers were in, whatnot. I stuck to that. There was
How
a
much
couple
money
days
did you
that we
win
just
on that bet?
he didn't bet me money. Apparently I don't pay my dispatchers enough to bet me actual money. But no, we a couple days we even had the phone right turned off, right? Because obviously when you're in another country, you're paying while you're down there. I said, screw it. We spent much time lounging by the pool on the beach. We had beautiful sunny weather. It was the perfect trip. I must say, like, weather was good. Food was good. I slept like a baby. Anyone that knows me knows that, like, it takes me about half an hour to fall asleep every night. Like, I'm not a person that can just, I'm tired, put my head on the pillow and go to sleep. I never have been.
No.
In the Dominican, I was that person, and it was not just alcohol fueled. It was legitimately because because I wasn't, watching what was going on. I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was able to just go, that was a good day. I've been in the sun all day. I'm hot. I'm going to sleep. And managed to fall asleep within 15 seconds, like every night. So
Wow.
it was a nice change. It was a very nice change. Coming back to the chaos has obviously been back to my old ways. I definitely missed the chaos that the towing industry brings day in, day out. But yeah, so I apologize for the hiatus. I apologize and I don't, because we all deserve breaks sometimes, including on this show. We don't complain, but we explain how hard it can be to find time to do this show. So when we do make time to, for ourselves, I'm not going to apologize too hard for it.
And for me, while I was having my break, my internet completely shit the bed. So I had to get an internet guy to come out, and that was a week-long process of trying to arrange times for them to come out and actually perform the service. And once they fixed my internet, I got better internet speeds, but unfortunately, it doesn't have the same range as it used to have with the old modem. So my internet in the office is almost worse than what it was originally. So that's wonderful. That's just how it is, I guess.
Yeah, no, the battle of Tomanji's internet has been a constant ongoing thing since the beginning of this show. I don't know how many times we have been right. Well, that isn't that what happened. We were about to record, and then we were gonna have an episode, were we not? And then your internet, we could not get it to work, or did we do that episode? I don't remember.
The internet that the last episode that you guys seen, it took me 4 hours to download the raw podcast, an hour and a bit to edit it, and then it took overnight to get it uploaded. So if any of the audio listeners noticed a bit of an audio quality difference in that episode, it's because I uploaded it directly from my end, because by the time it would have emailed the plane guy for him to upload it, I woke up, I think, at 5:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and it was just finished. Like, it finished within like the last 30 seconds. So if you notice that it came out a little bit later on Spotify, that would be why, and I do apologize.
That is dedication. That is dedication on a 4-hour download. And then God knows an 8-hour upload or something. So that is the dedication that we bring.
I hate leaving the PC on overnight just because you don't know what's going on.
Thunderstorms, power. Yeah, of course.
But I was like, I got to. I stayed up till like midnight, and I was like, it's still at like 50%. I was like, screw it, I gotta go to sleep.
All right, well, let's actually transition away from our wonderful break as all these listeners are sitting there going, I don't get a goddamn break. Why do these guys get a break? And so on and so forth, because they're the hardest working people in the labor industry, in my opinion. I wanted to ask you a question. We didn't actually put it on the note. It was something that came up to me while you were talking about this. Is how important is it? And this goes a lot more to management supervisor kind of things, but it's something we've really been working on within our company, or something I've been doing. My owner has been doing it for a long time. Is following up with customers. Right? How many times will a manager or supervisor follow up with a customer on something? Like, it might seem like minor, like the driver will come back and tell you, hey, this guy was a little upset, he didn't agree with the bill, or whatever the case is, and we're so quick to just dismiss that and just go, well, the bill's the bill. Like, you charged it, right? Yeah, I charge them this and this and this. Okay, that adds up, and the conversation is over. I do believe that consumers are slowly coming back around to, like, it's been a weird time, right? For the longest time back when the fight was all about price, right? And we've seen that. Everything was about getting the cheapest price, and people were willing to sacrifice quality for a better price. I feel like that trend is coming back, and it has been coming back for a little while, where, good customers especially, and they've always kind of stayed on that same plane, but even some of the, I'm not going to say not good customers, but different customer base have gone, I will pay a little bit extra to get good service, right? And good quality of service. And that quality of service does not end when the car is dropped off. That quality of service goes in the efficiency of getting a copy of their invoice. It goes in, I don't know how many people who I have followed up with who have, are so grateful that we called them just to follow up, just to make sure everything's good. Like there wasn't a problem, right? Even if it's not one with a bill. Like I give you a perfect example. I had a customer call us the other day.
Mm-hmm.
He was about 70 some kilometers away from us in an
Mm.
area that is serviced by plenty of tow trucks. And he called us and he said, look, I've been trying to get a hold of companies and I've had companies bail on me, whatever. I'm stuck here on this highway and I need a tire changed. I got a flat tire and I've been on the side of the highway for like 2 hours.
Yep.
The customer, so we advise him. He goes, what's the price? So we give him the price and it's like a $300 tire change.
Just because of how far away
just because of the mileage, because of how far we have to travel for it. And my dispatcher did the right thing. She offered him, she goes, for that price, instead of us changing your tires and a tire and you coming back to our home location, he was coming to the town that we're in. I can send you out a truck for pretty well the same price and I can tow it back. Right. And the guy goes, I don't need the tow. If you want to just come put my tire on, I don't care on the price. Come on out.
Yep.
So they called me up. I was out doing a job or whatever. So I was in my pickup. I was the same distance away, but at our second location. And I said, yeah, I'll go I'll go take care of it. So I get thinking on the way down. I said, I know a company that's really close by, like a good company that I trust. So I called them up and I said, hey, how long would it take you to get a guy to here? And they say 20 minutes. Okay. And what would your price be to do this service? And they said, we'd be looking about $120. Right. So less than half of my cost, like of what I'm going to charge.
Yep.
So I call the customer up. I say, look, it's not that I don't want your business. I absolutely want your business. But at the same time, like I have costs of running this call and I have a company that I know is good and is in your area closer to you. Cause it's going to take me, 45 minutes, 50 minutes to get out there. They can be there in about 20 minutes. And this is their price. If you're good with it, I'm going to send them out and, give them your contact information. The customer's super grateful. Hey, I appreciate that. You're not just trying to charge me because you can charge me, right? It's good business practice, especially this guy being a local, right? Like you're going to get, this guy's going to, I'm going to get service from this guy again.
Yep.
And the biggest thing that we did, going back to the whole original point of this conversation, is an hour later, I called him and I said, hey, Joe, I just want to follow up. I want to make sure you were all taken care of. I want to make sure everything was good with the driver. Like, you were like, you got the service you were expecting and you're good to go. And he goes, absolutely. He's like, I'm just rolling back into town. The guy was great. It was the price you told me. Everything was great. I'll call you, no matter what, next time I'll call you. I'm like, even if you're not in my area, you can call me. Because if it's something that is feasible for me to go do and makes sense for you as the consumer, I'll do it. If not, I will find you somebody who I trust or know in that area or recommend somebody in that area to do it. Now, I'm sure there's a guy screaming at his phone right now going like, whoa, why wouldn't you just take the money? Right? Like, hey, it's an easy call. You're in a pickup truck. You're going to drive out there. Your margin is going to be great on that call. And 100% it would be. But my customer service wouldn't be. Right? In my opinion, although the customer is committed to it and knows that our times and everything else, I have made a long-term customer by not subbing out the work because I didn't have my hands on any of the finances on it. Right. I let him pay them directly. And even the company that dealt with, like, what did you, because originally they were like, I think they were like $95. Like when I asked them and she said, I'm like, well, you're a lot less than what I coded. She's like, well, do you mind if I ask what you coded? And I'm like, I don't, like 200. I think it was 290. Yep. And she's like, well, would you be upset if I did 120? I'm like, no, I think that's reasonable for what the call is. Like, I think that's a fair value for the call. If she would have said, do you mind if I do 250? I'd be like, no, if you're going to do 250, I'm going to do 290 from where I am. Like, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to add that margin all to you. But yeah, if you want to add an extra $20 because it's on the highway or, whatever it is, and you're calling a guy in, I'm all for that. Like, that's reasonable, fair business. So I made a good relationship with the towing company, which I already had a great relationship with, but I solidified that relationship. I made a good relationship with the customer because he said, not only did these guys make sure I was taken care of and didn't want to overcharge me, right? But they followed up after the fact.
Yeah.
Right? That follow-up. It's amazing how many times, and it takes 2 seconds, and I'm the worst to not think about doing it because I've had a driver come in and tell me something,
Mhm.
and then I'm just like, okay, cool. And then I look over at my owner, and he's sitting there like, and I can just tell by the look he's giving me. He's like, "You gonna follow up with that guy?" And I'm like, "I should follow up with that guy." And you know what I mean? You just call them up and you say, "Hey, just wanted to check in. I was talking with my driver. I just want to make sure you were happy with the service. The pricing was fair. Like there was nothing,
Yeah.
nothing we could have done differently or better. Or is there anything that we need to work on?" Customers take that because it looks like the company cares, and they don't care in the sense of I have their email address. That's where I send them invoices. They don't go, "Oh, he's just sending Amazon every time you buy something. They send you this.
Mhm.
How would you rate your transaction?"
Yeah.
Right? It isn't that level. It's literally, somebody within the company is giving you a call and genuinely wants to make sure that everything was okay with your service.
Well, I think in that situation you put up, it was in your best interest because the customer was fed up with the people that he's already talked to. He's called you, he's agreed on
Yep.
your price, he wants to deal with
Yep.
your company. And then 20 minutes after he agreed upon dealing with your company for a said price, you say, "Hey, listen, I've got another company that's local to you. It's going to be cheaper." You've pretty much brokered a job, even though you didn't get paid, but that's pretty much what you did. You brokered a
Mhm.
job for your customer to get him taken care of because you
Mhm.
know that he's going to be a customer of yours in the future. So that's exactly what you
Yep.
did. So in that position, you pretty much have to follow up because if the company that you recommended did a piss poor job for whatever reason, that also
Mhm.
looks badly on you because you
Of
recommended
course.
and sent them out.
Of course.
In your generic day-to-day calls, following up with customers, I think is a little less needed because especially we get a lot of volume through roadsides
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And with those roadsides, they have the ability to follow up. Roadsides also send out that generic survey or whatever, right?
Mhm.
What you're saying. Um, but when it's a lot of times the people that are going to have the issues is like what you're saying is they're upset with the bill or they think that something is covered under the roadside but isn't and the call doesn't get done for whatever reason, or if they said, "Oh, my vehicle's 10 feet off the road but it's actually 200 feet off the road and the wrong truck got sent out," stuff like
Mhm.
that. The majority of the customers, if they have a bad experience, they're going to say something, right? And I'm not saying it has to be up to them to say it, but in your specific location, in your setup, yes, you have the ability to do that. It makes a lot more sense for you. But in a lot of smaller operations, 6 guys, 10 guys, they might just not have the manpower or they might not think of that the same way because, hey, I'm just here doing calls, doing call after call after call. And of
Well,
course, you
no, and
want your
it's not.
customer service to be good.
Mhm.
But if someone in your day, if you've dealt with 20 people that day, if one person just seemed a little off to you, you don't know if he's off because they're having a bad day because their tire blew out on the highway or whatever, or if they're off because of something that you said or did, right?
when it
So
when
yeah,
it comes to
would it make a difference if you called that person? Sure. But if you called every customer you dealt with, or even 20% of the customers you dealt with, that's almost a full-time job for some operations.
but I'm not saying like this isn't your like drivers that should be doing this follow up.
Yeah.
Right. And no, I don't believe unless there is a major issue following up with a roadside customer. I
Hmm.
have followed up with roadside customers if there is like you know, whether it be a driver that told me something about the call, whether it be a
Hmm.
complaint that came back through the roadside, obviously those you have to follow up with.
Yeah.
Um, very rarely though is there scenarios with those roadside customers, but your retail customers, the customers
Hmm.
that have made the decision to pay you directly,
Hmm.
right? The customer who has made the choice to spend their money with my company,
Hmm.
right? And we're seeing that a lot of companies don't do, or do a mix of roadside and retail.
Yep.
So, you know, of that, I do 40% roadside. I do 30% retail, and then I do 30% charge accounts.
Yep.
Right, charge accounts and retail are different for the sake of this argument.
Mhm.
They are still companies that have made the choice to deal directly with us.
Mhm.
But that being said, it's those 30% of the retail, and then your charge accounts, of course. Yeah, your charge accounts you should be following up regularly, but that's not a full-time job. It is nothing to pick one retail call a day. Right? Let's say one. Let's say even if you do 20 retails in a day,
Mhm.
right? You are grabbing 5% and having a 2 to 3 to 8, if they're talkative,
Hmm.
minute conversation a day.
Yep.
That is not unreasonable and is not a full-time thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is something that goes that, that extra distance. And yes, follow up with your charge accounts once a week. Hey, take a day a week and go visit your charge accounts. Hey, I just did that on Friday. I had to stop by. It's an account we've dealt with before from another city that set up a branch in our location. I stopped by and he told me, come on by one day. I'll give you a tour of how we set up, and cool.
Mhm.
So I just stopped in on randomly Friday afternoon, and, seen the manager, and we just talked about, because, hey, I want you guys to do my, this or this or this.
Mhm.
Cool. No problem. Like, what do even pricing wise, right? I
Mhm.
reached right out to this customer, and we had moved a vehicle inside for them, like did a shunt for them.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, before I send off the bill, because we hadn't done one yet for this location, I want to talk to you about what is a reasonable price for this.
Mhm.
What is something you are comfortable with that is going to be re-added to the bill,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to devalue my services, but at the same time, right? Those little jobs like shunting into shops, we used to do it for body shops. Remember, we used to shunt
Mhm.
the cars in the body shop. Those little jobs,
Yep.
you're not running it always at your full retail, because you're getting the, in the case of the body shop, you're getting the full retail accident tows that they'll call you for. You're getting the,
Yep.
and the same thing when you get into the bigger shops, they'll call you for disabled tractor trailers and stuff, right? So moving just a tractor in their shop, you're not doing full retail, but I want to make sure it's a price that you're comfortable with, so
Mhm.
that you don't get my invoice and go, oh man, they can charge me that every time I'm gonna, let's have a discussion
Mhm.
about it.
Yep.
What is it that you want to charge to your customers? What is your percentage? Okay, so let's add your percentage onto this. Are you happy with that rate? Yeah, no, I think that's a great rate. Perfect. Right. So now the customers also feel like, they're taken care of.
Mhm.
Right. It's not like I called these guys and and especially, a company like ours, and companies get reputations as they get bigger. Right. The biggest reputation is that, oh, they don't need my work. Right. Or it's just, it's set. Like, when you go away from family business and you start to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, that
Mhm.
corporate ideology can kind of set in, and that'll scare some customers away, right? Because they go,
Yep.
well, these guys don't care about me because they have so much volume, they have so much customers. I'm just another. And
I'm a
when you
number
give
to
them
them.
that, exactly, and when you
Yep.
give them that personal acknowledgement and that opportunity to, voice your concerns with them or to whatever, it brings you back to that. You can be a bigger company, but still
Mhm.
be in touch with your customer base. And I think
Mhm.
that is important when it comes to growing. And I think of a lot of smaller companies, like the ones that we've worked for, would make those phone calls. I really do believe it builds a bigger, you know, a stronger bond in your community, a stronger bond with your customer, a stronger, I might have just called them because they were the first one that showed up on the list.
Mhm.
But that personal phone call will, push the fact that I want to call them again. And you know what I mean? Really reiterate that with our customers, because, I think we forget, I do at least. I forget about the empathy side of this. I forget that these people
Mhm.
don't deal with this every day.
Yep.
Right? To me, it's, oh yeah, well, they you know what I mean, they seemed a little upset because the grass, whatever. God knows whatever they seemed a little off about. And to us, we just
Yep.
go, oh, that's normal. That's part of the business. But to these people,
Mhm.
this has never happened before.
Mhm. Well, I find it funny, like, you gotta really that's something like, if you're planning on doing something like this and implementing it, you're gonna have to get a little bit more information from the driver, who's coming in and saying these things to you, because let's say their car's parked 90 degrees on their lawn off their
Mhm,
driveway, and you gotta put one tire on the back or, like, onto the grass a little bit, and you leave a little indent on the grass. And
mhm,
that's just because of how they had their disabled vehicle parked. And It was unavoidable. But if they're upset about that, yeah, could it be warranted a phone call? But what are you going to say to them? That I'm sorry that this had to happen just because of how the truck was, and where the car was that we had to pick up. Well, that's not making any progress into making them happier because they think that you're in the wrong to begin with, right?
Not
To
always.
where to
Not
where
always.
okay, let's say you're in their driveway and the driver didn't tilt the bed up quite far enough and you left a scratch in their driveway. That is warranted a phone call because then that's a little bit of damage control. Just say, I'm sorry that this happened to you, yada yada yada. Try to smooth things over, right?
But
But I
okay, so
think
two things. Okay, two
mm,
things. The There's two different times that you're referring to in phone calls here. Both of the ones that you mentioned are literally because something went bad. It doesn't
uh,
something doesn't always have to go bad or have that complaint in order for you to follow up.
no,
You can just follow up too for the sake of following up, which goes just as far.
mhm,
But as for how are you going to make that better by just apologizing? You're not really making anything better. You are. The reason I say that is this: if you have a plumber come to your house and
mhm,
tell you something that doesn't quite make sense to you,
yeah,
right? Because of your understanding of the scenario, which may be limited,
mhm,
but you go, that really doesn't make sense. Then you have another plumber call you and reinforce that fact that, unfortunately, given the situation, like this was the best approach, and it's all how you approach it in that conversation. There
mhm,
is the opportunity to put them a little bit more at ease. That is okay. That is, what I mean? One person telling me, a driver on scene, and God knows our drivers have bad days too, and there's some of them aren't the best at explaining things,
mhm,
right? So, oh no, I have to. And then you call the customer up and you go, okay, so, I spoke with the driver, given the angle of the vehicle. We looked, I looked at other options that would make sense. This was the most practical way that we could avoid doing any further damage. Right.
mhm,
And you get that reinforcement on the customer while not throwing your guy under a bus.
mhm,
Right. You can absolutely handle that situation where a customer is happier after they got off the phone and you've told them the exact same thing, just in a different way.
yeah,
Right. The scraping thing. I mean, I've gone out and little thing like, I dropped oil on a
mhm,
driveway, and I've gone out there with the dish soap and the absorb all and the different things and sat there and scrubbed the driveway.
yeah,
Little things like that where, it doesn't cost as much to take care of,
no,
but it shows the company that, the customer, that, because you do have very picky customers, right? How many times have you had those
mhm,
very, very picky customers where like you hate to even, like, especially when they're the picky customer. It's one thing when you
yeah,
get one and they're picky. Like, I had a complaint the other day. I, believe it or not, still have not followed up with this one. Because I actually meant to. So one of my drivers gets a call to go impound a vehicle for the police.
mhm,
Now, this person that we are impounding, and I am not exaggerating, I have had 5 of his vehicles in my yard in the last 2 years. He is a
frequent
repeat
flyer,
customer. Yeah, frequent
yeah,
flyer. Younger kid, suspended license.
yeah,
Registers a car in everybody else's name or never registers them, and anyways, keeps getting caught over and over again. And then he's a pain to deal with at our yard.
mhm,
I got a complaint. My dispatch called me on Friday night. No, it wasn't Friday. I don't remember what night. She calls me. She said, "Hey, I just to give you a heads up. I got a complaint about, driver A, that he was rude to them on scene and everything else. And they were trying to take photos and videos and he wouldn't let them." And I'm like, not telling me much about the call other than the complaint,
yeah,
and luckily we have recorded phone lines so I can go back and listen to it. So
mhm,
I looked at the call and I seen the details and I remember the repeat customer and I go,
mhm,
okay. So I talked to my driver. What happened? Nothing. He's like, I loaded the truck and I walked around the truck and they were videotaping, probably doing a TikTok, because we always see this guy on TikTok with our trucks, of
mhm,
videos inside our impound.
yeah,
And I walked in front of her to do the to go around the truck, and she wasn't very happy about that. Like, I blocked her video, or I messed
mhm,
up her video.
mhm,
First of all, the customer is not my customer, the police are. I have a job to
yeah,
load this vehicle and get out of here. Second of
mhm,
all, if you are in my way, and she's like, she wasn't in my way. Like, I didn't bump her. I didn't,
yeah,
nudge her on the way by. Like, I was nowhere near touching her. But like, I'm not going to, oh, you're taking a video, let me go all the way around you. I have a job to do.
Yeah.
Right? I'm being hired by the police, not you. If this was a retail customer, yeah, I
Mhm.
just want to get a video before it leaves. Cool. No
Yep.
problem. Right?
Yep.
Like, you're paying me? No problem. Police are
Yep.
paying me for a seized vehicle.
Mhm.
Police aren't paying me, but the police have called me for a seized vehicle. I don't have time
Yep.
to, you know, and then what was the other thing? Well, he gave her a mean look. And I'm like, is this really the society we're in now?
Yes.
Is that your
Yes,
complaint?
it is.
That he looked at you funny?
Yep.
So he proceeded to load the vehicle. They asked while it was on the bed to get stuff out.
Of
He had the
course.
vehicle secured. It wasn't down. The bed wasn't up yet. He allowed them to get stuff out. And then at one
Mm.
point, like, they just kept going on about whatever. And he's like, well, like, we got to get going. Like,
Yep.
and the cop came over and told them as well, like, he's taking the car, go.
Yep.
So does that deserve a follow-up? In my opinion, it still does. I knew they were going to be coming to the yard the next day. I was hoping to see them. And they
Yeah.
came to the yard. I didn't actually notice that they were at the yard. I never got to speak with them. So now I got to call them and follow up because I figured I'll let them just come to the yard and we'll have a conversation right in person.
Yep.
Hey, I just want to make sure you're good. I heard those complain about, my driver was being rude. Again, it's a police call. My drivers can't be rude,
Mhm.
right? Like, I don't think walking in front of her and giving her a mean look after probably, 5 minutes for trying to get stuff out of the car after she's probably been sitting there 20 minutes before we got there.
Yep.
I'd roll my eyes at somebody. And like, if, I'm not exactly taking that as a complaint. I'm not, giving a driver flack for, did you roll your eyes at this police impound?
Hmm.
He's like, yeah, when I rolled up and I seen it's the same guy that we've had for 5 times in the yard, he's probably like, oh, God damn it. But no, you do have to follow up with that. As petty as it seems, you have to follow up on it.
But do you though? Because like you're just feeding into this society of the squeaky wheel gets the grease even when the wheel shouldn't be squeaky in the first place.
I'm not saying you have to apologize.
Yeah.
I'm saying you got to follow up.
Mm,
There's a
I guess.
difference. There is a difference, right? I know what this is going to be. I can almost predict, because I've done this enough now, that phone call is going to start with his complaint
Mm,
to what my thoughts are on what my, ideas are, and voicing them to him. Then
mhm,
followed up by how much is the bill? Followed up by, well, I think I should get a deal. Followed up
mhm,
by, thank you, have a great day, and we'll see you in 7 days to get your vehicle out.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
Right? Like, it's not feeding into the, oh, you complained. Oh, okay.
Mhm,
Let me fix your bobo. Let me fix where the words hurt you.
hmm,
Right? Or the
hmm.
mean look hurt you. No,
Yeah.
but you do need to follow up with it.
Mhm.
Right? Because there's nothing worse than, hey, I called and had this complaint and they said somebody would reach out to me and nobody did. That is worse than, you know what I mean? And like I say, you don't have to apologize, but you do
I
follow up
think
with it, hear out their voice, and then tell them where it stands.
when it comes to the impound stuff, and especially like what you're saying, a very frequent flyer,
Yeah.
those are the type of people that will never say, yes, I was in the wrong. They're always looking to blame someone else for their mistakes. And unfortunately, we deal with a lot of those types of people in this industry because of the situations they put themselves in, but they won't admit that they put themselves in that situation.
Mm.
And it is a fine line to walk because they can normally be rude in that situation because of they're blaming you for whatever
Mhm.
you did,
Yeah.
which is just normally your job.
Normally.
They're looking for either an apology or money off, like you were saying, and
Normally.
it's very easy just to say, "Okay, shut up, get away from me. I'll knock $50 off the bill just to make the situation go away." But then you are now feeding into that because they got a reward for being an ass when they really
Anyone
shouldn't
who
be
knows me,
rewarded. Yeah.
anyone who knows me knows that will not be my response. Here's
I know,
50
but I'm
bucks off the
saying
bill
for
to go
other
away.
people.
Yeah.
Right? We do that in other avenues sometimes. So let's say
Mhm.
you do have that scrape in the driveway,
Mhm.
and the guy would be he's a little blown out of proportion for what the damage is. He wants it was $1,000 tow bill for one little scratch in the driveway. He specs the whole bill to be comped, right?
Yeah,
Is,
well,
the service needs to be free because I got to scratch my driveway, and be like, well, I can't do that. Here, I'll knock $200 off your bill, and well, now that guy feels rewarded, right? Because he got something off the bill when realistically all it should have really been was, I'll come out with a Sharpie and put a mark in your driveway and you'll never notice it again,
well, that's
right?
it. Sometimes you do compensation
Mhm.
for, the sake of good business practice and the sake of, and again, and that's where you got to really evaluate the customer to see
Mhm.
where they're at on this, right? Like I've had some, whether it be for damage, like I had one, we blew a line right in this guy's driveway. Driveway is like 2 years fresh paved.
Mm. Yeah.
Blew hydraulic fluid everywhere.
Mhm.
So, and we went to clean it and it's still like we could not get it fully out. There was a stain, right? We cleaned and cleaned
Mhm.
and cleaned and we brought in different chemicals, let it sit. It just there was that little bit of stain that would take forever to go away. So I made a
Mhm.
deal with the customer. I said, how about we seal the driveway? Right?
Mhm.
It's pretty fair. We'll
Yep.
seal the boulevard because it was actually the boulevard section between the sidewalk and the road.
Yep.
And he goes, well, the only problem with that is that it won't match the driveway up from the sidewalk to the house. I
Yep.
said, you're right. I said, I can talk to my guy. I'm willing to cover and fix the mistake that I made. If you want, I'll see if he can get us a deal and we'll do that section too as well, but you're paying for the section from the sidewalk
Mhm.
to the house. And he goes, I
Yep.
think that's fair. He's like, you've wrecked my one area. I mean, it's kind of our fault that they won't match. So like I
Yep.
wasn't gonna push the subject. If I had to do the whole thing, I'd do the whole thing.
Mhm.
But he's like, no, I think it's fair. I'll do that portion if you do the portion of the road. And like I think the bill ended up being for him like $80.
Well.
$80, and he ended up paying and got this whole thing resealed.
Yep.
Right. Because the guy went, hey, look, I'm paying for the boulevard. What would you charge me? What would you charge for the driveway? I'll just charge this much. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Right. So it's fixing places where you went wrong in a spot like that. And a lot
Mhm.
of it, honestly, ask the customer. That is one thing that I've learned that I've been so shocked by. I had a job that I quoted out. And when my driver got there to do this job, it was lowering a boat back into a river on like a
Mhm.
track system and everything else. But once I got there, the job went sideways. It was
Mhm.
not quite what we thought it was. They weren't set up the way they thought they were. It was like a 3-hour job that took 7 hours.
Mhm.
So I reached out to the customer and I said, hey, and there was what made it worse is there was part of the delays were our fault, part of the delays was their fault.
Mhm.
So I reached out to the customer, and instead of just saying, hey, look, I know this went wrong. My driver told me you guys had this, 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 and this. I'm going to put the bill at this. Instead of
Mhm.
just telling the customer what I'm going to charge him, I asked him, I said, hey, I know that you guys had a day. It didn't go exactly how we had planned and everything else. What do you
Mhm.
think is reasonable? What time do you believe was spent because of, an issue that we had where we ran
Mhm.
out of line? Or, and how much was caused by maybe some issues on your end? And we came up with a happy number. The
Mhm.
customer is then happy about the job,
Mhm.
right? Because we always quote out on that stuff hourly, anyways. But instead
Yep.
of me just telling them I went from 3 hours to 5 hours and you're going to pay
Mhm.
this bill, I said, what are you going to be happy with?
Mhm.
Like, what do you think is fair? And so we discussed it. And I'm like, he's like, if you're, I'm like, I'm willing to take a couple of the hours like as my own, right? Like that's on us.
Yep.
So if I take 2 hours and you take 2 hours, do you think that's fair? We bring it up to 5 and everybody's, and he goes, yeah, I think that's more than fair. Perfect. Here's a
Mhm.
copy of your invoice. I still ate my time that it took me. The
Mhm.
customer, I could have just told him he was paying 5 hours,
Yep.
but by giving them that conversation, feeling that it's not like, oh, this company is just trying to bully me out of more money now. This company's trying to be fair with me. We came up to a mutual resolution. You can do that with a lot of customers, surprisingly,
Mhm.
by just, it's something you don't think of, and there's customers you never will. Like there's
Yep.
customers that just no matter what you say is you're going to get those. But at the most part,
Mhm.
like following up with the customer, having a conversation, giving them a chance to, voice whatever issues they might have had. Because I'm going off the information my driver gave me.
Yep.
Let's be honest. They lie too,
Yeah.
right? Like they lie as well. Like we sit there and we take our driver's side a lot over customers. But at the same time, our drivers exaggerate things too. Our drivers are human, right? They see
Yep.
things from their perspective only as well. So sometimes just doing that follow up, getting that extra little bit of information from the customer and having the conversation with them goes so far.
Yeah. So, speaking of drivers, I do want to get into one other topic for this show before we
Of
close.
course.
Um, you have two drivers that come to your door with
Yep.
resumes in hand. You've got one driver that's worked at 4, maybe even 5 different companies in the last 10 years. And then you have a driver who's worked for the same company for 10 years. I see the guy that's jumped around to 4 or 5 different companies in the last 10 years. There's probably some negative things to him because maybe he just wasn't a very good fit at all these companies, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. He could have picked up different bad habits over these 4 companies. But also, on the flip side, positive thing about him, he's got more experience because he's worked with different people and he's could potentially have learned different things, right? Where the guy with 10 years at the one company, he might be more loyal to that company because he's put 10 years of his life working with one company. But maybe at the flip side, he's he's only had the ability to learn from whoever's worked at that company over the last 10 years, and maybe he hasn't learned that much in the last 10 years. What are your thoughts on that? What resume looks better just from years of experience?
Yeah, so if we're going like we're putting these people as identical people, same
Mhm.
skill, like same, appearances, same
Yeah.
ideologies you get from them, same vibe you get from them and everything, but one's
Yeah.
been at 4 or 5 companies and 10, one stay with one.
Mhm.
The only question I would have for them that might affect my decision on this is mainly for the 10-year driver,
Mhm.
and that is why did you leave? The reason
Mhm.
I say that is if you've been 10 years in a place,
Mhm.
I feel like that guy is more likely to jump ship than the guy that's been to a couple every 2 years. The
Mhm.
reason I say that is because there is so much loyalty tied up into the company,
Mhm.
right? Like I had that problem. Like no matter where I worked, and
Mhm.
I'd moved around back when I moved up to, towards Toronto and everything else, I always carried loyalty to the company that I'm with now.
Mhm.
Always. I compared everywhere I worked to the company that I'm at now.
Mhm.
Right, because I had it wasn't a 10-year, but it was a long, it was a decent stretch with them before I
Mhm.
went anywhere else. As somebody who's moved around a couple times in companies and finding the
Mhm.
right fit and everything, I don't look poorly upon the guy with 4 companies in 10 years. I think that's a good run.
Mhm.
The towing industry is, and it depends what those companies were,
Yeah.
right? We've worked with a guy who jumped around a lot of companies. That
Mhm.
guy jumped around a lot of good companies.
Yeah.
I look at that more negatively than I
Mhm.
would if it jumped around 4 shady companies, because you're like, okay, this guy's just trying to find his spot.
Yeah.
But you are right. I probably, which one would look, when it says looks better on a resume, it's obviously going to go to the one place 10-year guy.
Yeah.
On paper, that looks better.
Mhm.
The reality is, I think I like the other one more. I think I would be more likely to look a little deeper into the move around, again, depending on the companies and whatnot. There's so many variables. That's why I hate these generic questions sometimes,
Yeah.
because they're not as easy as just, A or B.
Yeah.
Depending on what the companies were, depending on what the ages. I mean, if he's not 10
Mhm.
years, he's old enough. Um, yeah, like I take, we had a phone call with him, Davey.
Mhm.
Davey would be one of those guys that his resume shows one company,
Yeah.
right? For 30 years or whatever that number was that he had told us.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people go, yeah, it's true. He only got the experience from one person. Like I did learn a lot from
Mhm.
different companies that I worked at. Right. I learned a lot from the
Mhm.
company I'm at now before I left. I learned what I didn't want in a company to the company I went to directly after I left.
Mhm.
And then I went up Toronto way, and I learned a lot from guys like Davey,
Mhm.
from guys like Chris. Right. Like I learned, and then, for me, it was a growth time too, for learning how to deal with different people in different scenarios.
Mhm.
Right. Then I spent time with a small little company as a filler. We always knew this was a filler. This was never a career path with this company.
Mhm.
But it was just to kind of scratch that itch. And I learned things there too. You can
Mhm.
learn things at a company. It isn't about what you learn. It's not always about learning what you want. It can be
Mhm.
just as much learning what you don't want,
Mhm.
right? Or what not to do, right? Like I've worked for companies where I went, what do you, like, this is exactly what I don't want. And I wouldn't have known that unless I worked there.
Mhm.
right? Because
I
it looked
think
good.
I think the actual resume topic can be brought back up again of okay, so it's one thing to put the name of the company on your resume and say I was a tow truck operator, but you need to put descriptions underneath of what you actually did. And I think especially if you have worked at 2 or 3 towing places, the description of your job pretty much stays the same. So it starts to make you think, well, maybe should I put some different experience on this resume?
Yeah, they
Because
start bullshitting.
realistically, because realistically you can normally only got room for 3 prior jobs on a resume, right? So then how do you like break apart one towing company from another towing company in the experience that you've had?
No, I've absolutely looked. We always do when I review resumes, and a lot of it comes down to um, you know, following up with companies sometimes, right? And the towing industry is notorious for not following up. I think a lot of them are for not following up, and then for following up indirectly with the, a guy that works at the company. So you're going to call that guy and be like, hey, what did you think of working with Joe? And that driver, especially if it's a driver, if that just happened to be one, might not be able to give you the best, example, or might not be able to give you the true, it's just his side by side working as if, G and I were working side by side. When you do speak with their direct supervisors, a lot of times you'll find out some of the more, interesting deals about things, whether it be that they were late more often, whether it be all these little things that a driver working side by side with them wouldn't really know. So seeing those names, as long as you're doing the follow-up and you're doing some homework on them, I'm the first guy that'll take a flyer on somebody. I have made hiring decisions that I would question, that I still question to this day. And then I've made some of those decisions that I did not think would work out, and they turned out to be great operators. So comparing the experience, I've always been a big believer. I'd rather somebody with very little experience. 10 years is a lot. But that being said, you need those guys. You need that stability within the company. These guys that have that experience, these guys that can do, a little bit of everything, maybe teach some of these newer guys you have coming in. So my opinion, on paper, it looks better. One place, 10 years. Reality of things, depending on the situation, I think the 4 years can be an ideal. 4 companies in 10 years is still a good candidate. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, we have lost Mr. Toman G. His internet has gone out while I was on that rant. I managed to save it on my own. So it is a great time to go out on this show. I do thank you all for joining us again. I apologize again for the hiatus, the 3 episode delay. I'm much more tanned and relaxed because of it. So as I said in the beginning, I'll never apologize too hard. But I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Towing Life Podcast. We are out every Tuesday. We will be back again next week with more towing content. I hope you enjoyed. I can't wait to see you. Don't forget, head over to the website, www.towinglife.ca. Email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com, or find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. If you're watching over on the YouTube side, do not forget to comment down below. Hit that thumbs up. Thanks for seeing you. We'll see you again next week. Take care.